Hi, today's June 30th, and today we are going to talk with one of my fellow colleagues from Argentina, Leandro Fisanotti. Leandro, hi, nice having you.
Hi, Olesea. How are you? My pleasure.
I'm doing fine. How are you doing? How are things in Argentina right now?
Well, very well. We are getting into the winter. It's a lovely Friday here in Argentina, in Rosario. Things are exciting here. We are we are going to further discuss
Yeah.
the entrepreneurial environment here.
So things are changing.
Yeah.
Just before going into that, I would like to point out, because I know that Buenos Aires is up on the map and Rosario is somewhere down there, right? So it's much colder there.
Actually, no. It's Rosario is northern to Buenos Aires, but it's really
Really?
close. 300 kilometers. So the weather is pretty much the same.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. But let's find out a little bit more about the climate in Argentina, which is supposed to change a little bit because of the new Entrepreneurial Act that was passed in its final lecture lately, right?
Exactly. We are very excited about the changes that this act will provide to the entrepreneurial environment. I'm not sure how aware you are, but the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Argentina has been very diminished during the last 15 years or so. These changes that we will discuss today are very needed by the entrepreneurs in Argentina. The startups are needing much more support and funding, and we are confident that this new regulation will help improve the ecosystem here.
But before we go into the regulation, understand a little bit about the ecosystem, because I know from our discussions when we were in the leadership school in Germany, you were saying that Argentina was developing quite fast for many decades until recently. Can you tell
Mhm.
me a little bit more about the historical background and the way the ecosystem has developed up to a certain point in history? Just let me know a little bit about the history, because I know you're very much aware and how things evolved.
Well, Argentina has a long history of institutional volatility. That means that sometimes our regulation is more pro-market, pro-free market, and then Argentina turns to be a populist country for several years. That's pretty much what happened here from maybe the 2000 to 2015. While during the 90s, Argentina was a very open country, and it developed several industries that were in the top technology, and the startups in Argentina were rising. For the last 15 years or so, after the economic crisis and financial crisis that we had in 2001, our startups ecosystem was very poor. Even though we have resources and technology and very well prepared human resources, there are only a few companies in Argentina that were able to develop successful projects or successful startups. We do have maybe 4 of the 9 Latin American unicorns, but those companies had to go outside Argentina to get the funding and support needed. So that
But
means that
let's focus. I have a question.
That also,
What were the industry that have developed until 2001
well, basically, telecommunications and the
and
software development.
it picked? Leandro, what were the industry were you saying?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat? I lost you for a minute.
What are the industries that were very successful until 2001 for Argentina? Because maybe the question, maybe the solution to the problem was in the problem itself. So basically, I wanted to find out the industries that were developing during those times in Argentina.
Well, mainly it was telecommunications, software development, and agri-tech. Bear in mind that Argentina is a country that's a leader in agribusiness. So technology supporting the agricultural sector were always leader in Argentina, but that's mainly what happened during the 90s, and it's also what's going on now, but with modern technologies.
Okay, so basically the problem was in shifting and in devaluation in the currency and everything, rather than in the industries, because they were not the traditional ones. They were very tech. So with regards to the crisis, the international crisis, and just Argentinian market could not handle that. It started from outside, right?
Right. The main problem during the last years was the institutional environment. Not it's not about the industries that were being created or that were being developed in Argentina, but the institutional environment that was preventing most most development and also most investment to come to Argentina.
Okay, so they have tried to kind of secure the market and establishing very rigid regulatory investment to enter. That it's my assumption. I'm asking.
That's exactly the case. Most restrictions were removed, especially in terms of foreign exchange and international capital flows. So that's something in general that happened, not only for startups, but for all kind of investments in Argentina. That's after 2015 when President Macri took office. And specifically for startups, that's not only those restrictions that were removed, but there are also some new initiatives that are being put in place to promote investment in startups and innovation.
Okay. If we talk about the Entrepreneurial Act that wants to kind of, as I understand from what I read about the act itself, it wants to first of all diversify the ecosystem and to increase the number of connections between different industries through different incentives and through different support awarded to the startups, first of all. The pillars of this Entrepreneurial Act.
Well, this act has 6 keys that we should take into consideration. The first one is the possibility to create companies much faster and in a much easier way than it was before. According to the World Bank, it takes in Argentina 25 days to create a company. As an Argentinian, let me tell you that that's not the case. It takes from 6 months to 1 year to create a company in Argentina to be ready to go live in business. According to this new Entrepreneurial Act, it will take 24 hours to have a simplified society, a simplified limited company to go into business. That means that many startups and projects that are being done in an informal way will be able to create companies without bureaucracy, without lots of paperwork, and that means that those projects, those startups, will be eligible to be supported by the different programs that the government will put in place, and will also ease the way that they can get private funding. So that's one of the issues that is being tackled with this act. Also, the government will provide seed capital to different projects that are in industries that the government wants to promote, and that's mainly technology, production. So that's something that will help the entrepreneurs to get some to raise some initial money. And also,
so basically the program, the first one would be creating a register the company, and the second one, the government is going to provide for different programs and accelerators to initiate companies in specific industries, right?
Right. The second I mentioned is that there will be 380 million pesos, Argentinian pesos, for this year.
Which is approximately?
It's 380 million pesos. In US dollars, it would be like 20 million pesos, $20 million. That will be issued for seed capital this year in the budget, and also the government will create a fiduciary fund to co-invest with private venture capital. That means that the private sector and the public sector will partner in investments in startups. This is very interesting because the government it's saying at this point the venture capital funds are the most suitable persons to select the projects that are interesting to invest in. So I will only put the money, but I will co-invest with you. So once you choose the projects that are to be funded, once you select the entrepreneurs that are capable to perform those implementations, I will help with the money. So that's very interesting, and that's something that's new in Argentina. It's not like that the government wants to lead the process, but it wants to cooperate with the private sector. That's a huge part of this act, because it will be government will select the best 10 venture capital funds in Argentina, and will provide with 40% of the capital they invest in startups. So this will be probably the most relevant part of the act. And also, what the act wants to create is some awareness in the private investors about going into startups for their portfolios. To promote that, the government will allow that investors can deduce their investment in startups from their income tax. So it will be more convenient to invest in startups than in regular companies. So that's something that will help to create new public or new investors for the
A new
new project.
entity.
And
And new entities, because startups means also new entities, new entrepreneurs, new ideas, new innovation as well.
of course. And the last two relevant points of this act is that there will also be funding for accelerators. So there will be 13 accelerators that will be promoted by the government. 10 will be related to technology and social projects. And there will also be 3 accelerators for scientific-based projects. So it will be balanced between what we would say what market wants about technology and social projects, but also it will be about
New
scientific improvement.
discoveries.
And the last one is that there will be a regulation for crowdfunding, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that maybe it's going on in a very unclear and informal way in Argentina. With this new regulation, we will be able to have some crowdfunding platforms to raise capital very quickly for startups.
Yeah, and do you have right now Argentinian-based crowdfunding platforms? Because we know
Well,
Kickstarter, we know different international ones that maybe are accessible, or Indiegogo that are accessible to the global market. But do you have like something very originally coming from Argentina?
we do have some development in crowd lending platforms, but not focused on startups. So it will be an innovation in our ecosystem.
But focus more on a social project or some kind of other projects?
No, it's lending. It's just for
Just
any kind
lending.
of purpose, but it's not like Kickstarter in which you invest in equity. It's more like if I need money for anything that I want to buy, or I need money for vacation, instead of going to the bank, I can go for to lend money from the platform, from private investors. But it's so we are familiar with the crowdfunding concept, but we are not using it for startups. We are using it for general purposes.
Development. Okay, so it's not very focused on development of
Right.
entrepreneurs. Very interesting. I think it's very complex, first of all, and it's very interesting on the process and how it is going to go. Because if you were saying that the institutions were very much involved and there was so much over regulation, how will the government let it loose a little bit? Because as we were talking the other day, it's going to be done through federal agencies, right?
Right. This will be put in place by the Ministry of Production and our Securities and Exchange Commission. So it will be there will be a lot of work done by the government. I think that the most important and what will be the key for this to be successful is the possibility that the government creates the proper incentives for the institutions to develop, and then at some point step back and allow the private sector and the entrepreneurs and the private investors to continue this ecosystem. But if the government provides the right incentives, if it allows the institutions to grow, if we have stability in this new set of rules that will be the ones that we apply for startups and for all kinds of companies. I think that we have a possibility to be once again the regional leaders in startups and innovation. If we see the last reports, there isn't any presence of Argentinian cities in the most relevant startup ecosystems. That's something that happens basically in all Latin America. According to the last global startup report, there is only one Latin American city within the top 20 world and startup ecosystems. It's only Sao Paulo in Brazil, but Buenos Aires, it's a runner-up, and if things continue this way, I'm confident that Argentina will be a place to be for entrepreneurs and a place to be to launch startups in the near future. But as I was saying before, it's always a problem of incentives of institutions. So as long as this new regulation allows to create incentives and doesn't try to replace the private initiative, we will be we have the chance to be successful.
That's actually was the connection to my next question. It was about how is the private sector involved in the implementation of this law, and also the business associations, because if the watchdogs are not there, the institutions tend to communicate less and be less of transformative to entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs them as authorities and are not very keen to collaborate with them. How are they involved in the process of the law implementation and in the process of
Okay, that's a very good question, Alicia. The business associations and the private sector in general, and also the educational sector, it's very was expecting this regulation to come out, but it doesn't actually replace what was already going on. But what it does is improve the interactional infrastructure between these private efforts that were being put in place, so that in some way it optimizes the way that entrepreneurs were networking, investors were networking, and were being establishing relationships between them.
So it provides better interconnection among the private sector, the association sector, and also the government, right?
Absolutely, and also the fact that it's supposed to reduce bureaucracy will allow more startups to formalize, and that always helps getting the pieces together in terms of funding, of contracts, and registration. So that's something that should really help the environment to grow and to be more synchronized. That doesn't replace what was already going on in the private sector. There were many private institutions that were really working with entrepreneurs, and perhaps all efforts were isolated, but right now, hopefully, we will be able to be more synergic on this. But let me tell you that there were a lot of initiatives even before we were discussing this act, in order to set processes and procedures to raise capital for startups. For instance, the Argentine Stock Exchange was creating a program to privately place securities. So to do that, they were very involved in getting some government for the startups, on corporate government regulation, not regulation, but procedures and policies to create new companies that are easier to launch to the market afterwards. And that was one of the initiatives that were being put in place by the private sector. There were also some venture capital funds that were very active during the last years. So from my personal point of view, I think that what's most important about this new act is that it will be able not only to create the needed incentives that I was mentioning before, but it will also synchronize all those efforts.
Yeah, that's very interesting what you're saying. I have a question here coming from a colleague of mine. How do you see this about what was done in Chile?
Well, Chile was a country that was able to provide a lot more economic freedom and better market institutions than Argentina during the last 25 years or so. And the result of that is that not only the Chilean market grow bigger and stronger than Argentinian, it also means that it was a more friendly place for entrepreneurs, for startups to develop. And unfortunately, right now, Chile is going the other way around. They are losing some degrees of freedom, and that's a concern. We want our neighbor to be successful, and what we are seeing is that if the presidential elections are going to the more populist candidate, probably Chile will be facing some problems in the next year. And well, if Argentina creates the right incentives, it will be okay for us, and maybe we can even get some of the projects that are being actually put in place in Chile. But the main point here, as regards to your question, is that what happens that Chile had the right incentives during the last 25 years, and we didn't.
Mm-hmm. What is interesting, do you think that what is happening to Chile and what has happened already to Argentina was related to the fact that there was a big gap in the society with regards to technological literacy?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think whenever people are really afraid of what is happening in their country and that they will lose their jobs, they will lose their capacity to be employed, then they look for a more rigid government, for more institutional control from outsiders, because we know Chileans have imported lots of startups and also lots of great minds in entrepreneurs, and lots of entrepreneurs that came from the global market to theirs. How do we prevent that gap? How do we help diminish the technological gap?
The this challenge where education has the key to do this, but it's not only formal education, but also programs to get technology closer to the people, and so it's, I would say that it's more like a problem of social inclusion. So that's as you mentioned, that's a very important challenge, because that's what will guarantee that the right incentives will last here in Argentina. And well, probably we should see the example of Chile, that it's really close to us. And if we are seeing that Chile is turning around, it's because of that. It's because of the adoption of new technologies in the workplace. And something that it's I believe it will perhaps be easier for Argentina is that Argentinians are very technologically aware. Argentina it's one of the countries that has the highest internet use in the region, even in the world. Cell phone usage, social media. So perhaps it will be easier for Argentina. There will be a frictional process in which perhaps the most seasoned labor force will have some problems in adopting the new technologies. But if I always believe that this is a problem of incentives. If the institutions can support the market during this process, we have the possibility to successfully implement these reforms in the market. The Argentinian regulation is already very protective to the employment, so I think that that's something that that will help, because we can progressively lose regulation, and maybe we can easy this process of adoption of new technologies.
I think if we are discussing that, I see that globally as well that is happening, and I do believe that a lot of investment should be done through communication programs and programs that actually support a better understanding of what the culture of entrepreneurship, culture of technology brings about. So we could diminish the fears towards something new, towards something that disrupts their existence. So people can adopt that better, as you said. But it's also not, I don't think that, like from my personal opinion, is that there is so much left to the intellectual part. And we as people are so much into following people that are heroes, people that are, let's say, influencers, and that look to us as role models, that are to us role models, and we would follow them. So I think it's a lot of about this cultural background in the ecosystem, which is a really hard thing to shift. But from what I understand and from what I understood from our previous discussions is that are well prepared with regard to investment literacy and with regard to financial literacy. So there is a bit of work more with regards to technology and science and adoption of new sciences. And I congratulate you on for the Entrepreneurial Act. And we will follow with questions how it is implemented and what effects does it produce. I understand the private sector is very supportive and very much needs that. Do you have anything to add?
No, thank you so much for this interview. I'm glad to be here discussing what's going on here in Argentina. I really want to be again maybe in a year or so and be able to tell you that all what's going on here it's actually taking place. That this new act was very successful in improving the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we will see. We have a huge challenge going on here in Argentina. We are facing again elections this year, and we want change to continue. So I think that it's very relevant. Everything that's going on in Argentina. We have this huge opportunity to be once again the regional leaders in the market, not only for established companies, but more important for startups and innovation. And I'm really hopeful that this will continue. So I hope to be here with you in the future and be telling you that we are once again one of the big top entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world.
May I ask you one last question?
Sure.
Yes. Do you have a startup visa program?
Sorry?
Maybe, do you have a startup visa program? Maybe I want to immigrate to Argentina and start a business there. Do you have a startup visa?
No, but Argentina is very open to immigration, so you can come here and ask for the Argentinian citizenship, and it will be granted to you, and we will be very happy to have you here.
Yeah, because I was thinking maybe we should get involved in one of the 13 accelerators that you mentioned. Maybe not science-based, but who knows? Maybe something like related to technology. Thank you, Leandro, again. It was a pleasure talking to you as always. And I think every time I talk to you, I feel that I enrich my experience with your experience, which is very, very rich in investments and in working different stock exchanges, in leading, in working with consulting firms in the field, which I lack and I don't have. But I'm really happy that you share that with us, and really hopeful that we will meet in a discussion within 1 year. And the implementation of this law is going to be very successful. And maybe we'll do the interview in Argentina straight from there.
I'm very happy.
Nice having you.
Thank you so much.